Hi, welcome back to my channel. So I'm like super low energy today, but I did want to do a little talk because I like how when like the theme of my videos like interlink. So I'm like, okay, in a past video I talked about X, Y, and Z, and now I just feel like I've come to like a furthering of that perspective. Given like my age as well, I feel like everyone must come to this conclusion at different times, but I feel like, and I don't think actually many people have the, from my experience, mental ability to just make the discrepancy between this mindset and a less developed mindset. And I think it's come with age actually and life experience to get to the point where you can see other people know that they are being morally incorrect, and I'm talking on an objective perspective rather than a opinionated perspective, and still coexist in my own life, knowing that I'm not really doing anything towards them. So the thing is, yeah, I saw this video, and I won't talk about the concept behind it, but it made me see that whether you come from a liberal or what's the word, communist perspective, because I think people are a mix of communist and liberal. I don't really like do politics, if I'm honest. So, but what I mean by that is like a liberal, like a broad perspective mindset, a brushstroke over their logic, their perspective, from the way they see things, and a communist perspective of, and I can't remember which one's left wing, which one's right wing. But I think right wing is more of a communist, left wing is more of a liberal. Communist being like, I have to work for like what's the best within my community, what's best within my immediate household, do you know what I mean, what's best within my immediate self, like, and go from that mindset. And I think what I'm also seeing with this is I don't want to feel like I am shoved into either perspective either, because I think there have been certain perspectives in the past, like when I saw you, sorry, I'm not completed what I'm saying, with either one of these perspectives you can live peacefully amongst other people that have a completely adverse experience to you and have a completely adverse mindset and perspective than you, and still coexist with them on the level that you don't have to have the same experience. Like, it's not about the power and the justice that I feel like the individual will find is to move with your own mindset moving forward. And I think anyone that has any experience with the law or knows anything about life will know that if you feel that you have to, where the line is, regardless of the law like is in alignment with this as well, is when you enforce your mindset on other people that do not agree with you. That's usually where the line is. It's often quite a narcissistic thing that people do, people that obviously don't have empathy towards other people or maybe have some unresolved trauma. I think from in the real world, if you have that mindset, it's probably pretty obvious for like most people. And I'm not going to sit here and judge people that've got trauma, because I've had massively traumatic experiences in life, and I think I've had misguided mentalities just from seeing toxic people operate and having a bit of a toxic upbringing and stuff like that, not seeing like all ends of the spectrum in the world and everything. But I think, you know, it's not about actually having ultimate, because I think the way the universe works as well is it's actually it's like an Aquarius at the moment. We operate very much from ourselves rather than in Pisces, where we work very much from external perspectives. And I think this is the shift that I'm observing at the moment, to see that, you know, the universe and the way it works is actually very supportive of the individual, and it's in that very supportive of like free will. So you can't force someone to change their mindset, and I think it's actually irrelevant in terms of living peacefully whether you have the same perspective as someone else or not. I think obviously the issue tends to come up when you start getting antisocial behaviour and people trying to enforce their belief system on other people, and there's a varying reasons for that. But from my perspective, and someone that's healed massively from trauma, if you do actually just learn to handle yourself and handle your own trauma, this doesn't tend to be an issue, because you can understand that obviously your locus of control, and you don't tend to lean in towards those things, because in my experience, when you get too far with the law, and the law will chasten you like the good God does, but do you know what I mean, like you will not like feel the need to attack other people's mindset once you have overstepped that mark and you understand honestly what it helps you reflect on where you are traumatized and the point where you feel it's necessary to move outside of yourself to enforce your mentality when it's not your case. Because as I say, I think it comes down to as well meeting people where they are on their journey of life. Like, and I think this happens. I think a lot of us that deal with narcissists, if they aren't narcissistic, dare I say, have had a long history of this, and I wouldn't say I'm very good at it because I've actually allowed myself to reduce my focus on dealing with narcissistic people because that was taking up too much of my mindset. Not to say that I avoid narcissistic people, but I really don't prioritize being a good narcissistic supplier this time. Like, I deal with narcissists, I have them in my life, but you know, it's just to say that, like, you know, one person can have a personality disorder, one person can have mental health issues. I don't really want to put mental health issues in this because I feel like people often like box mental health issues in with personality disorders, and it's genuinely not the case. I'm not going to talk about mental health because mental health is really specific, and I think a lot of people have the wrong idea of mental health, so I'm honestly not going to talk about that. But I think when it comes to just having a different mindset or a different opinion or a different religious belief or a different, I think with religion, actually, from my perspective, a lot of them actually feed all into each other. Like, I feel like they're all in various ways kind of aligned, being a religious person myself. But I do think, like, it's a situation where, like, you literally can coexist with other people on a perspective of being liberalist or communist. There's no reason, and as I say, I don't feel the need anymore to actually go overly liberal with the mentalities that I have had, and I also feel able to be liberal on mentalities I have had in the past and I have repressed because they haven't aligned with other people, and I think it's actually quite a narcissistic abuse experience, to be honest, if you feel that you have to integrate another person's belief system. As I say, it's just wrong, altogether wrong. We all have free will, and I feel very much that I'm able to release my overly communist attitude, because I feel like I wouldn't say this is like the root of OCD, because I feel like that's like probably a bit of a thing to say, but I feel like when people feel overly compelled to have like a communist attitude when honestly they're more liberal, you know, you hear about like people that come from like really strict families and they feel like they have to do things a certain way and live a certain way and blah 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 blah, but really they actually just they believe in, you know, sexual liberation and they want to go down that route. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's, and I feel like it can be the same thing where you can be indoctrinated into that shit through like religion as well. I think like religiously, because I was brought up religious, you know, there's a lot of like guilt and shame and stuff like that, and it's actually in a sense quite liberalistic in the way that it's kind of this like, you know, you're shaming yourself amongst the church people and blah blah blah, and it helps you, it really makes you shut down a lot of your like more communistic elements in terms of like, if you're like, actually realistically it's going to serve me more to do this even though it doesn't agree with like the religious element, you know, and then it allows you to shape your personality in a particular way, which isn't maybe being authentic, because really I feel like anyone's honestly goal is to be authentic as possible to yourself and what you actually truly believe within yourself, because I think some quote, I'm actually going to quote this word for word, I think it said, there is no better joy in life than learning yourself. And I literally can't even remember who the fuck said that, but it's definitely something I agree with, and I think, yeah, it's really making me look into what I have internalized as a communist attitude versus a liberalistic attitude, or a left wing and a right wing attitude, because you can have a broad brush perspective on things that maybe you don't actually have that much like passion towards, or you don't actually have that much understanding in, but you can equally, and I think it's this and perspective, and it's, you can have a liberalistic perspective on something and you can understand the roots of it, but you may not live it, and you may not actually be part of that particular group, like a church. Yeah, you might be like, okay, well, I agree with like Christian attitudes, yeah, but you may not actually go to church and you may not actually live by Christian rules at all times. You can go into that communistic attitude and be like, do you know what, I'd rather spend my Sunday working rather than going to church, even though it doesn't necessarily agree with, like, if you have like a tight-knit religious community that you are looking into, do you know what I mean, and agreeing with, and that's okay. Like there's no person policing necessarily over you. I mean, there probably is some people, but I feel like it's, you always have to look to yourself. Like, you know, it takes away a lot of your personal autonomy and freedom and stuff when you look at a liberalistic attitude. It's like a group thing versus personal belief system. It's more than that, because I think it's more of a, as you say, political and collective experience. It's very political experience, because there's a difference between having a personal opinion and having a group opinion versus having a, you know, there's a slight mixture there, because I suppose it's more about having a community and living in the world and living amongst other people and living in, you know, through different life, you know, issues and such like that, to where, you know, you can agree with like the LGBT community, but you may not be, you know, in the LGBT community. You don't need to necessarily feel that you have to do the same things that they do, and just because you agree with a cause, equally you may do. I feel like I find myself being very like, I like to wear like things and wristbands and such like that and stuff like that I agree with sometimes, and just sort of like, you know, I don't, you know, I like to sort of rep things in, like I'll wear t-shirts and stuff or whatever, like if I agree with the cause or something like that, and you know, that's one thing. But it's like, you know, it's really oppressing. I think you know, we've come a long way, I feel like, as a society in this sort of thing, you know, when it comes to, you know, gender as well, like women feeling there being a liberalistic attitude of, you know, I wouldn't say, I'm not going to bring up misogyny, because again, it's a slightly altered perspective. I think there are still a lot of misogynists in the world, but when you talk about women, you know, even the law going into, oh, women, you know, shouldn't have rights, they are overly histrionic, they should always submit to men and husbands in general and stuff, no matter how abusive they are and such like that. Whereas the law has changed in that sense, and, you know, women are much more respected as individuals now, and they are able to look at a communist perspective and be like, okay, I would actually like to ask my husband to X, Y, and Z during the weekend, rather than feel like I have to submit to his anger issues because I'm not able to support him in the way that I feel is most necessary. It's more functional for everyone. This is something I've definitely learned in my adulthood in general, is the more comfortable and grounded I am in myself, the more I can actually serve other people, and the more I can actually grow as a person, and the more I can actually empathise with other people's issues. Because if I'm not strong for myself, how am I going to be strong for anyone else? And all it's going to do is create adversity and external anger and external stresses in the environments and situations that I put myself in, realistically. I think that goes for anyone else, but I think just on the level of, but I really wanted to just focus on the level of like disagreeing with other people. If you see something in other people that you don't like, or you can see as overtly wrong, sometimes, yeah, there's a place to like do something about that, or, you know, make necessary action. But if not, it's like, it's really like quite powerful for me to see that you can actually live, you know, coexisting with other people. Even like, it's a narcissistic perspective, I think, to say that we all have to do the same thing, we all have to serve the narcissist, we all have to serve the man, we all have to serve this experience or that experience. It's like, no, if you can coexist with someone that has a slightly differing attitude as you, or a very differing attitude, whether they're liberalistic or communist. Because realistically, I always go with like the universal truth. If the universal truth is we're all human beings, and we all have free will, and we all have the right to believe whatever we want, and we all have the right to not believe whatever we want. I think as well, a lot of people are quite actually afraid because of, like, you know, and I think, yeah, I think a lot of people are afraid of having certain belief systems and leaning into truths of how they actually are sometimes, because of social pressure and because of the fear of the unknown and the fear of social judgment and stuff like that. Whereas you've got to think, a lot of narcissistic people honestly really don't care for your liberation. They want, honestly, you to conform to what they want you to do. So they want to reduce your sense of self so you can get them to conform to them. And I think this really is an issue for a lot of people. And actually, I think narcissistic groups within themselves, to be honest, because from my experience, they're just like the blind leading the blind a lot of the time. And so it's really important to look to what you honestly think and honestly be honest with yourself. Like, you know, I'm so liberal when it comes to, as I say, like things like freedom, and I have like ADHD and I have like autistic tendencies, and a lot of the time when I see people like that, they often have these very like big, you know, dreams, and they're very like, oh yeah, like freedom and this, that, and the other, and they're very much like they swing the other way in a lot of aspects, and that's more of like a liberalistic perspective. But it's also like, you know, that doesn't mean I should look at it as a communist perspective as well and be like, oh, well, I just let myself go in every way possible, like, I don't care about anything, I just need to X, Y, and Z, because it's disproportionate. Like, the contrast is always going to be there. Like, if you are, liberalistic in a perspective where you can be like, oh, I want freedom, and I know that's like quite a random one, but if we look at that and then we go and like look at it as like in a personal and communistic perspective and be like, you know, I want freedom within myself, I want to move through life and have financial freedom, that means a lot of work, you know. I'm not saying that's me, but you can want financial freedom, you can want freedom in your health, so you can work on your health, so your health improves, you know what I mean? Like, a lot of the time, you know, if you look at it from another level of, you know, what you might perceive that, like, you know, if you have like a highly strict kind of like career focused family, they may be like, oh, freedom is a joke, like you don't need freedom, you need work ethic. But like certain people, if they take on that attitude as their liberalistic belief system, this is a belief system, it can be programmed and it can be reprogrammed. At the end of the day, if you take that on as a liberalistic perspective and you're like, oh, I can't allow myself any freedom, then they may not have good productivity levels, because if that's not their mindset, a lot of the time, a lot of people and good thinkers and stuff like that, they have a lot of breaks, they have a lot of, you know, things that they do they don't just sit there and read books like 24/7. They may read a lot of books, but it is all about lifestyle. You know, it's very stressful, and for a lot of people their productivity level won't be very good if they just deal with work and they don't have rest time, because that's not conducive to mental well-being at the end of the day. And this is exactly what I'm saying, like, and it's not about, I don't think, internalizing. It's the same thing that goes with anything else. It's not about internalizing, because someone can look at you, yeah, and I think there's a lot of cognitive distortions, especially with the narcissistic people, I have to argue, where they look at you, they judge you. Maybe you're a communistic person, yeah, in a perspective of, you like to look neat and tidy, and you like to hold yourself within, you know, a particular element. You like looking after your hair, yeah, and your skincare, and you always wear makeup, and you always like to look tidy and put together. You know, you might get someone that comes into a perspective, you know, and maybe, you know, judges you for that, and it's like, oh, they're like Little Miss Princess, they have to have everything, you know, they don't have any hardships in life is really hard, like, and you don't understand that, and judges you incorrectly. But in my perspective, that is literally just, you know, that is literally just an incorrect perspective. Like, it's an unnecessary perspective, and it's unfair, I would say, to judge someone in that way. I mean, I would call it unfair, but, like, you know, that's my personal perspective, and that's mine to have, and I'm not expecting anyone else to go out their way to, you know, listen to it. So, do you see what I'm saying though? And I feel like this is how I have to grow in this season. It's, you know, like, honestly, any small thing or big thing actually can change because I think I look at the universe, like, the universe is a measure, in a sense, to what your perspective is and where you are in life and what you're doing, and as within so without, in a sense. So I feel like when you look outside in, it's kind of useless in a sense. I think we all do it, and there's a space sometimes to just be a bit mindless and just be like, because I feel like I've very worked on inside out for a while, so I think it's only natural for me to swing from this outside in perspective, because sometimes it is just like peaceful to just be like, oh, I'm just going to walk through the world, I want to just like live in life and people watch and this, that and the other, and that's fine. But I think when you're looking for personal growth, it's always inside out, because, like, as within so without, and the universe will only reflect back to you where you are. Do you know what I mean? So if you have these unaddressed belief systems and this untouched, or, you know, this disallowment of yourself because you have internalized a liberalistic attitude or a, you know, groupthink attitude rather than looking to yourself, you can always work on that. Like, life will always reflect that to you, and I think it can present in how you feel, and you can feel like out of alignment, and you can feel out of touch with yourself, and you can feel, I've seen it manifested through envy towards other people and other people's mindsets and stuff, and I've seen it through, you know, it can manifest in many different ways. It can manifest in health problems, you know, or just, you know, because I think when you don't express yourself, you don't want other people to express themselves either, and when you are mentally shunned and stunted and stuff like that, it's all about healing at the end of the day, and that is the opportunity we have. So I'm not going to ramble any more than that, but I feel like I have made my point, and yes, this is how we learn. Because I feel like I've definitely done videos recently about like manifesting. My last video was manifesting through healing, and I think I did see this thing about spiritual awakening. When you get to the point of you've healed a lot in your experience, you can actually lose a lot of motivation for certain things. And I think it's when you lose your motivation for certain things that you then can build the roadblocks into how you actually want things to be. And I think a lot of the time when people do have these mixed attitudes, or just like unaligned attitudes of attitudes that they've taken on from like external people and parents and schools and life in general, and feel that they feel pressured into having a certain mindset, it's not to say that you have to destroy all those mindsets. If you align with those mindsets, cool. But like, if you don't, then it's all you can. It's just building your character, and it's fun. But at the end of the day, I think, yeah, when you lose that motivation after you've healed, like, you can find, I think, and I think I would say that it can come from a wounded place as well, because it can be quite wounding actually to your inner child and to yourself in general if you actually are telling yourself, oh, you can't be this way because of this external liberalistic attitude that you feel that you have to adhere to. It's the id and the ego at the end of the day, if you are denying yourself. And I think that's a level of spiritual awakening and that contrast and that healing, which will probably minimise your motivations to certain things that maybe you have felt compelled to in the past. But sometimes, when you have that like niggle of like, oh, I should do this, I should do this, I should do this, I should do this, but you are not doing it, but you know that like you should do it, or you have been indoctrinated into thinking like that and you should feel like that, but I think it's when you lean into how you actually feel, and like and then you can lose that motivation to be otherwise. And I think that's like a really powerful thing actually, because all it will do is build momentum into what your actual desires are, and allow that to manifest for yourself. And then the universe will start to bring you things as well to help you move towards that place. So yeah, thanks for listening.